Imagine for a second that history is a script. A finished, bound script sitting on a director's desk. Every plot twist, every character arc, it was all written down before the curtain even went up. Now scrap that. Imagine it's all improvisation.
It's jazz.
Exactly. It's jazz. It's wild, and we're just making it up as we go along. Which one of those actually feels true to you?
It's the oldest tension in the book, isn't it? Free will versus divine destiny. Are we just pieces on a board, or are we the players? And honestly, depending on the day, you might answer that differently.
Totally. And today, we are wading right into the deep end of that debate.
Oh, we are.
We're looking at a lecture by the theologian Dr. J.I. Packer, simply titled Providence and Evil.
Yeah.
And I have to say, this isn't just dry, dusty theology. This is really about how we cope with the chaos of the world.
It really is. I mean, Packer is a giant in the Reformed theology world, and in this lecture, he's attempting something almost impossible. He's taking the famous 5 points of Calvinism.
Which usually scares people off with all the jargon.
It does. And he's trying to show that they aren't these cold mechanical rules.
Yeah.
He argues that if you see them correctly, they're actually a roadmap for gratitude.
That is a massive shift in perspective for most people.
It is.
When you hear Calvinism, you think of a stoic God, a rigid system. But Packer seems to suggest that if you really get how God governs the world, it leads from theology studying God to doxology.
Praising God, that's his entire mission. He wants to move the listener from scratching their head over the logic to, bowing their head in worship. He thinks we get stuck on the math of it and miss the music.
So let's unpack the music. Packer starts by laying down some ground rules. He says you can't understand God's planned providence from just one angle.
No, you need a trifecta of perspectives to really get the full picture. He calls them complementary perspectives. You have to hold all 3 in your head at once.
So what's the first one?
The first angle is what he calls the history-centered or eschatological view.
That is a $5 word right out of the gate. Eschatological.
It sounds academic, I know, but it just refers to where history is going, the end times. Packer references a scholar named Oscar Coleman here.
Christ in time.
That's the one. And the big idea is that for a Christian, history isn't a flat line. It has a peak, a mountaintop. And that peak is Jesus Christ.
So everything in the Old Testament is climbing up the mountain, and everything since is coming down the other side.
In a way, yes. Coleman argues that Christ is the absolute midpoint of history. So the Bible looks back to him, and it looks forward to his return. It creates this tension. Theologians call it the now and not yet.
The kingdom of God is here now, but it's not fully here yet.
Exactly. Packer says you can't understand God's decree without realizing it's a story with a destination. History isn't just one damn thing after another. It's a narrative.
Okay, so that's the wide shot. The cinematic view was the second angle.
The second is the sinner-centered or confessional view. This is where the camera zooms in tight. It gets personal.
This is the amazing grace angle.
Precisely. It's rooted in the Reformation confessions of the 16th and 17th centuries. The focus here isn't on the cosmos, it's on gratitude. It's the believer looking in the mirror and saying, I don't know why God did everything he did, but I know he saved me.
It feels like that view bypasses all the intellectual arguments.
It does. It goes straight to the heart. It's the difference between studying a map of a rescue operation and actually being the person pulled out of the water.
Right. And the third angle.
The God-centered or doxological view. This is what you find all over the songs. It's the idea that everything, absolutely everything, is a stage for God's self-display. His justice, his mercy, his wrath, his love. The universe exists to show who God is.
So, timeline of history, personal gratitude, and God's glory. You have to hold all 3. But now we have to get into the conflict, because you can't talk about this without talking about Calvinism versus Arminianism.
A rivalry that has split churches and holiday dinners for 400 years.
Packer gives us a bit of a history lesson. Who started this fight?
Well, it takes us back to the late 1500s in Holland. A man named Jacob Arminius. He was a brilliant young theologian, but he started asking, dangerous questions. He couldn't stomach the idea that human free acts were fully under divine control.
He went rogue.
In a sense. He felt that if we freely will to do something, God can't be fully in charge of that act in a deterministic way. So in 1590, his followers issued a document, the Remonstrance.
Which is basically a fancy word for a protest.
Exactly. They asked for equal rights for their theology, the idea that man has the final say in accepting or rejecting God.
And the establishment. I'm guessing they didn't take that lying down.
Not at all. In 1618, they held the Synod of Dort. a massive international council, though, they didn't invite the Catholics or Lutherans. It was a Reformed family meeting. And the result was a scorched earth rebuttal of Arminius.
And this is where we get the famous flowers, right?
This is the birthplace of the TULIP. The Synod's decision was a point-by-point answer to the 5 points of Arminianism, and those 5 points form the acronym TULIP.
Okay, let's decode this. Because what I found fascinating is that even though Packer is a defender of these points, he actually hates some of the name.
Oh, he really does. He thinks the terminology has caused so much confusion. He spends a lot of time in the lecture just trying to rebrand them so people get what they actually mean.
Let's start with Total Depravity. I mean, talk about a branding problem.
Right. It sounds like every human being is a monster.
Yeah.
And that's exactly the misconception. Packer says it doesn't mean everyone is as bad as they could be. You aren't maximizing your potential for evil every second. You might be a very nice neighbor.
That's a relief. So what does it actually mean?
Packer prefers the term total inability. It's not about how wicked you are. It's about how helpless you are. It means sin has affected every part of you, your mind, your will, your emotions, so you're totally unable to save yourself. You're spiritually bankrupt.
Okay, so T is, I can't fix this, which leads us to unconditional election.
It follows logically. If we can't save ourselves, then God's decision to save someone has to be based on his choice, not our merit. It's unconditional because we didn't meet a condition to earn it. God didn't look down the corridor of time and pick you because you were a great guy.
Okay, now we get to the L, limited atonement. This is the one Packer calls a most unhappily phrased teenage L. Why does he hate it so much?
Because limited just sounds so negative. It sounds stingy, like God set up a velvet rope and is restricting his interest to a select few.
Like there's a shortage of grace.
Exactly. But Packer argues that misses the point entirely. He prefers particular redemption or effective redemption.
What's the difference in nuance there?
Okay, think of it like a bridge. The Arminian view is like a bridge that's 10 miles wide, big enough for everyone, but it only goes halfway across the canyon.
So it makes salvation possible for everyone, but guarantees it for no one. You have to jump the rest of the way.
Right, the Calvinist view. It's a narrower bridge, maybe, but it goes all the way to the other side. Packer argues the cross didn't just make salvation a hypothetical possibility. It actually guaranteed salvation for the elect. It got the job done. It was effective.
So it's about the potency of the work, not just the scope. Okay, next up, I. Irresistible grace.
Another name Packer dislikes. He says irresistible conjures up this image of God dragging people kicking and screaming into heaven.
A cosmic kidnapping.
It's cartoonish, he says. He references Jonathan Edwards here. The idea isn't that God forces you against your will. It's that God changes your will.
How does that work?
Well, why do you choose anything? You choose what you want most in that moment. Packer says the Holy Spirit opens your eyes to the reality of God so vividly that you suddenly want him more than anything else. You're following your strongest urge.
So it's irresistible in the way a starving man finds a banquet irresistible. He isn't forced to eat. He runs to the table because he wants to.
That's a huge distinction. It's attraction, not coercion.
Yeah.
Packer calls it effectual calling.
And finally, P, perseverance of the saints.
Or preservation, as Packer prefers. It just means God keeps those he calls. It's not just you holding on to God, it's God holding on to you.
So that's the system.
Right.
TULIP, it's logical. But Packer admits this creates a massive tension. He calls it the great paradox.
It's a huge one, because on one hand, you have this strict plan, God chooses, God calls, but on the other, the Bible commands everyone to come.
Yeah, the clash between God's preceptive will, his commands, and his decretive will, what he's actually ordained.
Right.
Packer points out, Jesus says, "Come to me, all you who labor." That's a real invitation. It's not fake. But then the theology says, not everyone is chosen. How do you square that?
It's a brutal question, and Packer's answer is, well, it's humility. He says this duality masks a real unity in God's will that we just can't see yet. He points to Romans 11, where Paul, after chapters of dense theology on this, doesn't end with a solution. He ends with a doxology.
How unsearchable are his judgments?
Precisely. Packer argues we have to accept that God knows what he's doing, even if we can't trace his paths. We're responsible to the command, come, regardless of the secret decree.
Which brings us to the Q&A part of the lecture, which was, for me, the most interesting part.
This is where it gets real.
Yeah. People started asking, okay, Dr. Packer, if God decides everything, why should I bother to pray?
The classic robot objection. If the script is written, why ask for edits?
And Packer cites James. You have not, because you ask not.
Right. Packer explains that God doesn't just ordain the ends, the result. He ordains the means, the process. And prayer is one of the engines God uses to get things done.
So God ordained that the way he would heal someone is through your prayer.
Exactly. But the questioner pushed back. They brought up Abraham trying to save Sodom, Moses pleading for Israel, and they called it bargaining.
And Packer pushed back hard on that word, bargaining.
He says, we have no footing to bargain with God. We have nothing to trade. We can't say, I'll do this if you do that.
So what were they doing? Because it really sounds like an argument.
Packer calls it a prophetic partnership, and this is a beautiful concept. He believes that in those moments, God places a deep concern in the heart of the believer, a concern that matches God's own.
Wait, so the prayer didn't start with Abraham?
No. Packer argues the Spirit pours out a spirit of supplication. God wanted to show mercy to Lot, so he placed a burden on Abraham to ask for it. They weren't changing God's mind. They were expressing a burden God had placed in them.
That shifts the whole perspective. You're not fighting God, you're participating with him.
You're reading your lines in the script. It turns prayer from a negotiation into a resonance.
Then the conversation got heavier. Someone asked about leaving an abusive marriage, about pain and ethics.
This is where Packer's pastoral side really comes out. He talks about the principle of the lesser evil.
What does that mean in practice?
He says in a fallen world, sometimes every option has some evil in it. Breaking a marriage covenant is a bad thing, objectively, but staying in a situation where people are being destroyed is a worse thing.
So you're choosing the path with the most good, or the least evil.
Yes. And he applies this to medical ethics, which I found fascinating. He talks about pain relief. He says painkillers are a gift from God, but he draws a line. He says the supreme value of human life is relationship.
The morphine example.
Right. If you sedate someone into a coma, you've eliminated pain, but you've destroyed their humanity, their ability to relate. He suggests it's better to have some pain and remain conscious and relational.
That is a profound distinction. It prioritizes connection over comfort.
It does. It fits his whole theology. God is relational, and we are made in his image.
Okay, we can't skip the Pharaoh question.
Yeah.
This trips everyone up. The Bible says God hardened Pharaoh's heart.
It sounds like God forced him to be evil just to make a point.
It does.
Packer views this as a contest. He points out that initially the text says Pharaoh hardened his own heart. He picked the fight.
So he started it.
He did. And Packer says God simply confirmed that choice. God continued to apply pressure by sending Moses. That pressure just triggered Pharaoh's resolve to resist.
It's like the sun hitting clay versus wax.
That's a perfect analogy. The same sun melts wax but hardens clay. The difference was in the material, not the heat. God didn't inject fresh evil into Pharaoh. He just kept pressing the button Pharaoh had already wired up.
That leads to the ultimate question, though. Where did the bad material come from? If God created everything good, where did evil start?
Packer uses a really cool analogy here, Beethoven.
The symphony.
Yeah. He asks, before Beethoven wrote the Eroica Symphony, did it exist? No. But was it a possibility? Yes, because Beethoven had the capacity to create it. It was a potentiality.
Okay. I think I see where this is going.
He says Adam and Eve were created mutable, capable of changing. They were good, but they had the capacity to turn away. The possibility of evil existed because freedom existed.
And when they chose to disobey, they actualized that possibility.
Exactly. Evil isn't a substance, like a rock. It's a privation, a relationship gone wrong. It didn't exist until a good creature made a bad choice.
Which connects back to the mystery of it all. We can explain the mechanics, but the why is still hidden.
And that's where Packer ends the lecture. He goes to Psalm 119. Your word is a lamp to my feet.
I love the image he uses here. Life is like a journey at night with a flashlight.
It's a crucial distinction. A flashlight doesn't light up the whole landscape. It doesn't show you the destination 3 miles away. It just lights up the little circle right in front of your feet.
You can see the next step.
And Packer says that's enough. The secret will of God, the big mysterious plan, that's the darkness around us. We aren't meant to analyze it. But the revealed will, God's commands, his promises, that's the circle of light. We walk confidently in that light, trusting God with the darkness.
It really circles back to that idea of doxology. The point of learning all this TULIP stuff isn't to win an argument. It's to get to a place where you could say, God knows what he's doing.
Precisely. If studying sovereignty makes you proud or makes you feel like you have God in a box, you've missed the entire point. It should make you humble. It should make you realize how small your flashlight is and how big the God in the darkness is.
So what does this all mean for us practically?
It means we can stop trying to play God. We don't have to carry the burden of history. We just have to stay in that circle of light, do the next right thing, pray for the people God puts on our hearts, and trust the author of the script.
That idea of prayer really sticks with me. So here's a thought to leave you with. If Packer is right, and our earnest prayers are actually God pouring out a spirit of supplication through us, the next time you get a sudden urge to pray for someone you haven't thought about in years, what if that isn't just a random firing of neurons? What if that's God handing you a few lines of the script he's writing, asking you to read them aloud?
It changes everything. You aren't just talking to the ceiling, you're answering a call.
Thanks for diving in with us.
Until next time.